What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the Big 12 College Football Betting Preview, Part 1. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-host, Collin WIlson. It is the exciting Big 12 from top to bottom. The way that we're going to break this one out, for Part 1, we're going to do 7 teams. We're going to do all the teams that are, about 12-1 or better to win the league, considered like the 7 teams in the mix. That's Arizona State, Baylor, Kansas State, Texas Tech, TCU, Utah, and Iowa State. And then in Part 2, we'll cover the 9 remaining teams, go through their win totals, and then try to identify which team we think could be worth a flyer, which I think is definitely viable in the Big 12 with all of the chaos. I mean, let's just take a look at the Big 12 last year.
Well, we should preface it by saying our podcast started last year with the statement that 8 of the 16 teams could win it, and the 8 that you and I had picked out, none of them were Arizona State. So
yep.
We should say all 16, right? Including Oklahoma State?
I mean, yeah. I had Iowa State 11-1 last year, and then didn't feel great about it and hedged in the championship game with one of the 9 that I didn't think could win it, which just goes to show you the chaotic nature of the Big 12. These teams just aren't separated by much. Like last year, BYU was picked 13th. They finished 13th in the AP poll. Arizona State was picked last. They won it. West Virginia last year was a bad football team, a very bad football team. Couldn't stop a nosebleed. They were one of the 9 teams alive on the final weekend. West Virginia, because they were sitting at 5-3. Like that's all it took last year. I mean, Baylor 2021. Look at the year before where they were. TCU 2022 came like Arizona State last year. Some teams can come out of nowhere because there's just not a lot separating teams. I told you this before. I went through an exercise outside of my projections where I went through every single Big 12 game and then just said, okay, what do I think happens in every game for the fun of it? And I ended up with a 6-way tie for first. And then I was looking at tiebreakers, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at a ton of tiebreakers going in to the final Big 12 regular season weekend. But I will say with the Big 12 this year, a lot of returning production. You have kind of some polar opposites in where these teams sit, but 7 of the top 20 teams in returning production are in the Big 12. Arizona State, Baylor, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Utah, Houston, and Arizona. Then you have some complete resets. UCF, new coach. They're one of 2 teams with a new coach, and they're both reunions. You have UCF with Scott Frost, complete reset. West Virginia with Rich Rodriguez, complete reset. And then Oklahoma State, which basically just...
Have they hit the reset button, or are they just like in pause mode? What are they?
Well, I mean, they got new coordinators, and I don't know. They're trying. Not sure how well it's going to go. But yeah, they're outside the top 90 in returning production. And then you have Colorado, which obviously lost a ton of talent. And then BYU with their quarterback situation. We'll get to all of that. But of the 7 teams we're going to cover in Part 1, 5 of those teams are in the top 20 returning production. TCU is 31st. Iowa State's a little further down at 41st. So there's a lot of returning production among these teams that are considered the 7 that are in the mix. Let's start with Baylor. Win best if you want to go over best number you can find over 7.5 minus 105 at FanDuel. Best price to win the league plus 750 at Caesars. The offense last year really took off in the second half of the season. You had Bryson Washington, the freshman running back, but they really missed in the bowl game. He got hurt in the first play. But the offense was a top 10 offense over the final 7 games. A top 5 in terms of 20-plus yard gains and negative play rate. That's a great combo. They were averaging like 40 points and 500 yards per game. Sawyer Robertson really came on. They switched up the offensive line a bit. Jake Spavital in his first year, was able to get a more advanced install as the year went on. The question is, how much more can they improve on that? Or is that kind of the peak of the offense? The offense returns a ton. They even got Ashton Hawkins just ruled eligible, their wide receiver. They had some talent at wide receiver. I like the kid Kobe Wilson out of Texas State. He'll be good in the return game as well. But yeah, their offensive line returns a ton. All upperclassmen. The one position to watch is Siraki at right tackle, replacing Barrington. He had starts previously, but that's the position that I'm really watching there. The defense has to be better.
Mm-hmm.
There's some new staff hires on the defensive side. I like the defensive back coach hire. Aranda's calling plays again, but they need to get better on the back end. They were 127th defending pass explosiveness. There's some talent coming back, but we'll see how the secondary plays out. I mean, you have the cornerback 2 position is what I'm really watching. Carl Williams, where does he fit in? I think he's the key to it. Jenkins needs to have a bounce back year at corner. They added Simpson Hunt, this kid from Ohio State. He's young, got a big body. Could he play nickel? Is he going to play on the outside? Is he going to get so there's some moving pieces in the secondary. I like some of the ads at the linebacker position. And they added some bulk up front because their run defense has to get better as well. So I think for this team to reach its ceiling, Aranda, who's known for defense, he's got to get that side playing much better. From a scheduling perspective, they do have 5 Big 12 home games. They avoid, from the top, Iowa State, Texas Tech, of the top 7. Big 12 road games, not terrible. Oak State, Cincinnati, Arizona, and TCU. They don't play any of the projected top 6 or 5, depending on your rankings, on the road. That's good. It is also I should note that they have a very tough non-conference start. Auburn, which they're small underdogs, and then at SMU. Sawyer Robertson had a leg injury last year. Apparently he's healthy, but when he can run and move, that's when their offense is at their peak. He's got to stay healthy. Robertson, with his head injury, obviously a concern. He has to stay healthy. And then their offensive line as well. So can they get through those 2 games? Number one, can they win one of them? You don't want to start 0-2 because then you have Samford, then you're hosting Arizona State in a huge game. So, but those 2 non-conference games will be huge for their win total in particular. What are you seeing with the Baylor Bears?
The scout team being run by Walker White, the former Auburn quarterback here for game 1 coming up. I like Baylor a lot, but I have issues. I know that everybody's on this bandwagon. I know the number is taken off. I get it with the schedule. You catch some breaks. The secondary does scare me, like you mentioned. And Sawyer Robertson's numbers, the things that I look at to see if it's a quality quarterback. I look at big time throws and turnover worthy plays. I don't look at touchdowns and interceptions as much. I look at your accuracy. I look at your depth of target. I look at if you're good with wideouts, if your contested catch rate. Do you throw on target balls? And with Sawyer Robertson, I just am not there. I see 28 to 8 TD INTs, but I also see 15 to 16 big time throws and turnover worthy plays. And what I have more problems with is that just 7 of those 16 mistakes came with pressure. So he's making mistakes in clean pockets. And I just don't know if that comes with a little bit more age in the position. I mean, he's been in the system forever, but only Spavital for 1 year. So maybe there could be some growing pains there, but I'm not happy with 69th and on target rate. That means that he's hitting his moving targets down the field without breaking stride, not even in the upper echelon of FBS football. Does that come with age? Maybe. You get 2 dudes back. You get, Ashton Hawkins and wideout Josh Cameron back. I think he'll be protected. The offensive line returns 4 starters. They were 50th in line yards and rushing success rate. So I think from a rushing perspective, you're going to get the exact same thing that you had last year. But I think, the limitations on this offense could be the ceiling for Sawyer Robertson because I just don't see it from a mistake perspective. Defensively, I think, getting Keaton Thomas was huge. His 114 tackles. They have a FIU transfer coming in at linebacker. Travion Barnes, I was betting on him on Tuesday nights. He has some of the most superb pass defense grades out there. So I think Baylor, at least when we have all these question marks in the secondary, they did go out and get a linebacker that can play excellent coverage defense in passing down.
Bob's
So,
White from Tulane, I think, was a good get also. And I
yeah.
think one of the most important things, they went out and got 750 pounds of beef on the interior from Tulane, a nose tackle in Texas A&M. Not only did they need that, but it enables guys like Marshall and Lands to play their more natural positions. They were just pretty small in the interior. So
Right.
I actually like their front seven. All the questions I have are on the back end.
Yeah, and I agree, and that makes me a little nervous. We always get to the Big 12 podcast, and I'm nervous about secondaries in this league because you do have some quarterbacks that can absolutely sling it, and they're kind of careless, right? They'll take a deep shot home run to give up a turnover worthy play. Auburn week 1, I've already bet that in the action app. I have issues with Baylor's secondary. They're going to be tested right off the start with Jackson Arnold and those 3 wide receivers.
Yeah, that's huge stats, right? Right, that receiving group, and that's probably the best receiving group they'll play all year.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I'm hesitant on a Big 12 number is not just that game, because that could shift the market. But remember, it's not so much that game, because while they play that game, Iowa State and Kansas State's already in the can. And one of those teams is going to win that game, and one of those teams is going to be the favorite in the Big 12 because each of them is then going to have like only 4 road games left. Whoever wins that Kansas State Iowa State game should be at the pole position of the updated Big 12 odds. So I'm not saying Baylor's number can get any better after losing to Auburn, but it could go down a little bit from a Big 12 perspective. And then you look, if the secondary is really what I'm worried about with Baylor, who on this schedule scares me? TCU can get down the field. We're going to talk about that. They can get into that secondary. Kansas State, I mean, we'll see what kind of Avery Johnson mistakes are being made, but his passing has gotten better under Matt Wells. They have a bye before they play TCU. They host Utah. It's not the easiest path when you have those 2 names, but they do dodge a couple of other big boys. So, the road games you already mentioned, one of the best road slates you could have in the Big 12. So I do like Baylor, but I think we need Iowa State and Kansas State to play each other. The odds to shift in the Big 12, and we need Baylor to get their ass kicked by Auburn in the first weekend, and we might get a better number on them overall.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Number one, I'm trying to see how the secondary comes together. Baylor is as of right now my pick to win it. Are you
taking the number now, though? Or are you going to wait?
I'm probably going to wait because I also want to see if they survive. I want to see if they survive those first 2 weeks without injuries, the rest of camp. Right. I don't think it's going to get much better between now and then. But from a power rating perspective, I have like less than a point separating the top 4 in this league. So then at some books there's like Utah's and Kansas State are plus 550. You can get Baylor plus 750. Semi intriguing to me, but every team is like 6 to 7 to 1. But yeah, I'm trying to figure it out from a timing perspective. But I do want to see how this defense comes together and some of the injuries throughout camp and over the first 2 weeks of a very tough schedule. Special teams worth noting, they should be elite, but kicker, definitely something I'm watching. You might have a freshman kicker and some close games. There's going to be close games in the Big 12. That could be noteworthy. All right, let's move on to
there's a redshirt freshman kicker, and then there's a freshman, a true freshman kicker. I think we're definitely getting a freshman kicker.
So that definitely could be an issue, but the rest of the special teams should be elite. Let's move on to Utah. Just a disastrous year for the Utes. Everything went wrong. Murphy's Law in effect. They went 1-5 in 1-possession games. Did not finish eligible for a bowl. Finished at 5-7. There was injuries all over the place, and the offense was just bad. It was the peak of Cam Rising news, and is he available, is he not? And it just was a disastrous year for Utah. So what did they do? They went out and they brought in Devin Dampier at quarterback. They also brought in his offensive coordinator back, who is going to install a spread option here. It's still going to be run heavy, like 55% run based on historical splits, but there's going to be a little bit more tempo, quarterback run. The question with Dampier is, can he throw consistently and stay healthy for a full season? That's definitely a concern I have because it's a lot easier. This isn't the SEC, but it's the Big 12. It's a big step up in competition. He was only 58% completion percentage, 12 interceptions last year. His best asset is his legs. Can he utilize them to his fullest and stay healthy all year? They do lose some skill position talent, including their running back Bernard, but they bring in some guys in the backfield who I think can be good in this offense, including Parker from Washington State and a New Mexico transfer who obviously knows this offense. The offensive line, arguably the best in the country. You have 6,800 snaps back, 2 potential first-round picks at tackle. This offensive line is elite.
A lot of Joe Moore Award straw polls already pointing to Utah.
Yeah, so there's no questions there. I do have major questions about the wide receiver room. You know, you bring in some guys who just don't wow me, and they lost Singer from last season to the NFL. They lost Parks, and then who was going to be their number one, they lost in the offseason to USC. So they're going to need some guys to step up, like Merriweather, Simmons, Davis, Whitmore. Just guys that I'm not overly wowed by. Wide receiver room, a big question mark for me. As far as the defense, they need some depth guys to step up on the defensive line. I actually do have some questions there, but there's only, I think, 39 career starts in the defensive line. Generally speaking, you do trust Morgan Scalley to figure out the Utah defensive line, and they'll probably find some guys, but that's definitely a question. Linebacker room, do lose Barton, but you lose Reed, but Barton is back. You get DeMooney back from injury, Snowden back at nickel. Like, the linebacker room is solid. The defensive backfield, they might start this kid Cotton from Cal Poly. So one of the cornerback positions definitely is a question for me. And then tight end, maybe down a notch. They might be using Barton and Snowden, by the way, on offense some. So we'll see. There's some reports out of camp that's occurring. But my main questions here, Dampier health and his effectiveness as a passer, and then also how does that wide receiver room come together? And then on the defensive side, some of those depth guys got to step up on the defensive line, and one of the cornerback spots I am watching. This very interesting team. Should be a big bounce back season for Utah, even though it's a bit of a rebuild on the defense and the skill positions. The offensive line is just so good, and with a run-heavy attack with Dampier, as long as he stays healthy, that should be effective enough to get them a bunch of wins here. From a scheduling perspective, they do have 5 Big 12 home games, a very easy, I shouldn't say very easy, but a fairly easy non-conference schedule, especially compared to Baylor. They do have 2 road games, but they're at UCLA, at Wyoming, and then they host Cal Poly. From a conference perspective, they host. So they play a lot of the top teams, but they host them all. You got to come to Utah. Texas Tech, Arizona State, Kansas State are all coming to Utah. They only face one of the top 7 on the road, and that is Baylor late in the season. Their other Big 12 road games, West Virginia, Kansas, and BYU in the Holy War, so not terrible in that perspective. Utah, I project 7.84. Best win total you can find out there. You can either go over 7.5, minus 165, or over 8.5 at plus money. So you're looking right around 8 is their projected win total. Best you can find on the win the league is 6-1. What are you seeing with the Utes?
Yeah, my win total is 8.8. So you can definitely say I'm in the boat of I love Utah. One of the first plays I put in the app earlier this year was Utah's opening game against UCLA, which was either a pick or -1 at some places, and hopped on that because good luck, Nico Iamaleava with Scalley's 4.25. We'll start on the offensive side first. Now, yeah, we have a lot of questions, but you know what? We've also had 2 to 3 years of Cam Rising mystery injuries, mystery playing time, and we don't have to worry about that anymore. Now it's literally maybe an injury that happens on the field that we can see that would keep Devin Dampier out, but his offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, coming with him from New Mexico is going to be electric when it comes to what the Utes have seen on the offensive side of the football. I mean, remember, we've had to pull defensive backs to come and play running back for the offense here. We've had pig farmers. I mean, this has been a bare bones offense for so long. Now you're getting a quarterback that created a missed tackle on 34% of his 160 carries at New Mexico. I get the competition. I get how you can juke anybody in the Mountain West out of their shoes. But that's almost a rate of Ashton Jeanty last year. Ashton Jeanty, 40%, created a missed tackle per his carries at Boise State last year. You mentioned Wayshawn Parker coming in from running back from Wazoo. 20 explosive runs, averaged 3.5 yards after first contact. So not only can he burst But once he gets touched, he can still juke a little bit and get rid of guys. Now, Dampier does get his multi-use weapon from New Mexico. You mentioned it, Ryan Davis. He had 130 snaps in the slot and from the wideout position. So he can really line up anywhere and hopefully plug some holes up where we might have some empty things in the cupboard at wide receiver for Utah. He had 2.1 yards per route run. That is just above being explosive. His ADOT, his average depth of target, was at least 12 yards. So this is Dampier's warm blanket at night that he is covering up with. It came with him. And you mentioned the offensive line. It's going to be elite. On the other side of the ball, I don't have as many questions or concerns, I think, as you do. I mean, I love the 4-2-5, the best front six in all of the Big 12. Their linebacker, Lander Martin, he comes back with 3 tackles for loss and a couple sacks. They got their nickel position back, which is extremely important to them. They were top 20 in Havoc. I don't see anything changing from a success rate, a quality drives, a finishing drives that finished all top 20 in that too. I just don't see.
Yeah, you can usually count on their D. And last year, their D had no help from the offense. If it can get help from the offense, and it's an offense that, even they're going to use more tempo, can have the ball more.
Yeah.
That'll help their defense as well. You can usually trust Scally. So I'm not worried about their defense. There's just a couple positions. Their defensive line, they need some depth guys to step up. That usually does happen to Utah in one of the cornerback spots for sure. But my questions are more with Dampier. I'm not as high as others. And
we'll probably wait till September 20th when Texas Tech comes to Rice Eccles and has a come to Jesus Big 12 moment to see if they can hang on the road with a team that's really been, doing it for all these years, even back to the Pac-12 days. I think that's the big part of their schedule. There's this, when you have a conference this size and you have so many potential tiebreakers, at least Utah is going to face most of these guys head to head, and they get them all at home, like you mentioned. Like Utah and Arizona State, that's in Rice Eccles, and both teams are off a bye. Utah and Baylor, sure, that's down in Waco, but both teams get a bye. So Utah has an advantage even going to play one of their biggest games of the year and having fresh rest to do it. You want to talk about an advantage against Kansas State on November 22nd, the weekend before Thanksgiving? Kansas State will be on back-to-back road travel there. There are advantages in this schedule that favor Utah, mostly having them at home, but their bye weeks fell into 2 places against some of the top-tier echelon teams, and I will trust this coaching staff with extra time anytime. So the bet, I do like the over. If you want to play it that way, that's fine. The bet for me is plus 280 to make the Big 12 championship game. I love the tiebreaker situation. I love the fact that I have them edged a little bit out, especially at home in Rice Eccles, but in even coin flip games like on the road against Baylor, I make that Utah -1. So I just see a lot of advantage for Utah in the schedule, and I think they're solid, and I've been a Devin Dampier lover since last year. So I'm ready to go plus 280 to make the championship game.
Yeah, all these teams at the top in the Big 12 for me, I basically just make I have Utah. Let's see. I have Utah and TCU a step below the top 4, and that's just my reservations with Dampier.
Mm-hmm.
So let me see. I'm at 7.9. Sorry, I'm at 7.9.
What's the best juice you're seeing on 7.5? I mean, over 7.5 is good, but I wouldn't play it over 140. So,
all right, let's move on to Iowa State, who has been very consistent in the Big 12. They finished in the top 4 in 7 of the past 8 years. This is a team that relies on development. It's not a team with a ton of money. And it's going to be Matt Campbell and this defense that's going to try to keep them in games with their 3-3-5 dime stack. And the one thing I will mention with Iowa State, though, in that 3-3-5 is you're seeing that more and more in the Big 12 specifically. There's a couple hires we'll talk about that are implementing that. Cincinnati implemented that last season with a defensive coordinator who has Iowa State roots. So that advantage, right, of, this defense, we can shut down Big 12. Teams are becoming more familiar with it and know how to attack it.
Because it was the Big 12 buster, right? For so long, it was how you had to attack the offenses.
It was the spread buster for sure. Iowa State did get to the Big 12 title game last year and lost to Arizona State. They won a program record 11 games, despite 13 starters missing at least a start. So it was a very successful season. But they did finish 5-1 in one-possession games. They were +9 in turnovers. Might be some regression on the horizon. Rocco Beck is back at quarterback. And, I mean, this team, the biggest question with them, their running backs are back. The biggest question for me, their tight ends, although they lose their best blocker there. The biggest question is twofold for me on the offense. Wide receiver, you lose 2,000-yard receivers to the NFL. They were one of only 2 teams to have 2 1,000-yard receivers last year. The other was Ohio State, who played more games than anyone, and Ubuka got to like 1,013 in the final game. So that's impressive to have 2 receivers that get to 1,000+ yards. They're going to be missed. They bring in transfers to try to address it. Townsend from UCF will man the slot. Chase Sowell from ECU. Jackson's back from injury. They're decent transfers, but big step down for this wide receiver room. The offensive line is also a major issue for me. You lose your center and left tackle to the NFL. So you're going to have I think you're going to have Neal is starting at left tackle. He started, so the guys who started in 2023, if a center started, but they were so bad in 2023. I think you're going to have your right guard move to center. He was bad. Yeah. So all the guys who are back are not very good. There's a lot of experienced options, but you lose your 2 best, and none back are great. Why is that even more important this year? Well, you lost your 2 NFL receivers, and now you lost 2 offensive linemen that are on NFL rosters. You probably want to run the ball more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that they're going to be able to do that effectively to make up for the loss of their receivers. So I'm really, really concerned about this offense. The defense, you lose 4 of your top 6 in the secondary that was so good last year. 3 of them are on NFL rosters, and you lose Bo Freyler, you're kind of the leader in that star position. So it's Williams at corner is good, but the rest is a major question mark. I mean, you might need this kid Bell, a corner from Lindenwood, to start, and then some depth guys to step up. So this secondary could take a big step back. I do like the linebacker room, mainly because they had so many injuries last year.
Yep.
And they just had tons of guys that got so much experience. So they're loaded with depth from a linebacker position. The defensive line, you also lose a bunch of guys, including one to the NFL. Dominic Orange is the stud at nose tackle, but how much can one man do? The rest of the defensive line is major questions. The depth pieces were bad last year. You had some transfers from lower level programs that not wowed by. So the defense to me has questions as well. From a scheduling perspective, only 4 Big 12 home games, and then the neutral. So you have 4 Big 12 road, 4 Big 12 home, neutral against Kansas State in Dublin to start off the year. The Big 12 road games, not bad. Cincinnati, Colorado, Oklahoma State, and TCU. So you get a break there. You avoid Baylor. You avoid Utah. You avoid Texas Tech. No true road game against the top 5 or 6, depending on your projections. They won the scheduling. Like, as much as you can. Like, there's not that much difference between the Big 12 teams. So talking schedule is kind of meaningless in some sense. But as far as the top teams are concerned, Iowa State, I think, was on the lucky side here.
Yeah, a lot of strength of schedule is 11th to about 10th to 25th toughest in the nation, and Iowa State's like 35th. So it's close margin, but they did get breaks.
Yep. And yeah, look, the one thing I will say, they play Kansas State in Dublin. There's no break for the next 3 weeks. So they get South Dakota at home. They should win that game. But then you have the Cy-Hawk rivalry, and I don't think Iowa State's beaten Iowa at home in like 15 years. That game will be pretty big for the win total. Look, my numbers aren't terribly far off from their projection, but I'm kind of the best you could find out there. If you want to go under 7.5 minus 125 is out there at Caesars. The best you can find to win the league. They're definitely a step below the other 6. 13-1 is out there. Mm-hmm. No interest in that for me. I would lean under. I project like 7.2, so like I'm kind of close to market, but there's a lot of things I don't like about this team. I also think they're going to lose in Dublin. We will be betting that game. By the way, quick plug, Windy City Watch Party, week 0 in Chicago. We'll be there. Producer Matt Mitchell will be there. Duck will be there. Breeze. Kerner and Raybon will be doing like a fantasy event. We'll have like a live NFL fantasy draft later in the day with prizes. That'll be fun. But we're mainly going there 11 a.m. Kansas State, Iowa State, just for drinks, sweating games all day. We'll have a bet on that game. I like Kansas State in that game. I'm waiting on some injury news. Kansas State is like not. We'll talk about them in a sec, but they're not. The media is not allowed to watch any of the 11-11s. Their offensive line has some injury questions. Waiting to get some clarity there. We'll talk about Kansas State in just a minute, but I think Iowa State drops that first game. I certainly lean under here. Have no interest in them from a conference perspective. Too many questions. Wide receiver, big drop. Offensive line's a major question. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. And then on the defense, the losses in the secondary were massive. And the defensive line, I don't think they're still going to be able to get any pressure, which puts even more onus on that secondary that I think takes a big step back. So I'm out on Iowa State this year. What do you see?
I am 100% completely in on Iowa State. I love Iowa State. I love Matt Campbell. And I think the thing is we started a year ago and all we could talk about was Rocco Beck's freshman season and how amazing it was for a freshman that he had done from TDs, from big time throws. Like his arm was insane. His turnover worthy play rate actually moved from 2.6 to 3.6%. It got worse last year, and despite having the 2 best wide receivers in the conference. Well, that's because Iowa State football got a little bit farther away from what they were generally doing, what their whole moniker, what their whole identity was. They changed it because of Noel and Higgins, because they had these outside weapons. Now, 48 TDs and 17 interceptions into 2 years. I think Rocco Beck is ready to cook and get back to what makes Iowa State football so special on the offensive side. And what is that? Massive tight ends that are healthy. And right now we've got 3 of them, both Gabe Burkle and the massive 6'7", 250 plus Benjamin Brahmer. They both return at tight end. They had 50 targets last season. There, Brahmer is there's a baby freshman out there last year. Matt Campbell's been excited about him for years. You're going to get both of those guys on the field at all times. So Iowa State is going back to the traditional 12, and Cooper Anderson, the redshirt freshman, is going to get playing time, and you're going to see a lot of 13. You're going to have tight ends in motion, confusing the shit out of Big 12 defenses, banging heads, taking short passes from Rocco Beck. The numbers that Rocco Beck put up his freshman year when they were so stellar that's exactly what they're going to go back to here. And I expect Rocco Beck to return to 2.6 turnover-worthy play rate, because it's going to be a shorter passing game, because it's going to get back to that Iowa State Matt Campbell offense that they've already had. Now, Chase Sauer.
I will say that is the way. That is like kind of the new wave. You're seeing this in the NFL, college, teams that can utilize more tight ends, more multi-set back formations are going to start to have more success, because this is a cat and mouse game. And the Big 12 is a enormous microcosm of that, because what did we just talk about? The 3-3-5. The Big 12 is known for spread offenses, right? Come out, put up a ton of points. Iowa State had this 3-3-5 dime stack that was built to slow those spreads down. Well, everyone else started adopting some of those principles. You have this, 3 high safety, a lot of 3 high safety looks, and that's now been adopted. The zone read options been now. When you're a defensive coordinator, this is one of the first things you do on the first day. We got to stop the zone read. We got to stop the spread. So, how do you counter that if you're an offense? More backs, more tight ends, more running. You even saw this in the NFL last year. So, transitioning back to that type of offense could work in their favor, as all these other defenses in the Big 12 adopt the Iowa State defense. Maybe it's a bit too late, but I'm just too worried about the offensive line. So good.
Okay. I hear you on that. But there is an offensive line that's going to have a lot of shifts, a lot of pulling guards, a lot of movement. We are getting back to what made Iowa State offense special in the first place, and just a headache for defensive coordinators to defend. Now, Chase Sauer does come in from ECU, 2.8 yards per route run. That is serious for a wideout. That is explosive. So there are over 100 starts on the offensive line, but I don't think the talent is there from Iowa State that you've seen before. Now, Stuck, you mentioned the linebacker core coming back. The one player that got knocked out last year, where we were considering should we still be betting Iowa State, was Caleb Bacon. So Caleb Bacon is now back after his 2024 injury. He had 22 pressures in 2023. And then I think the edge that you need to know, probably make or break for this three-man defensive line is you got to have pressure from the edges. You got to have solid contain from the edges. They went out and they got Tamatoa McDonough. He brings in 40 pressures, 27 hurries, and 7 sacks to the edge position. Yale kid, yeah, Yale from 3 years. And if you're a WWE fan, Tamatoa McDonough is the combination of two wrestlers. So that's actually kind of a fun thing to say. So yeah, the whole team just had 17 sacks last season. Like the havoc was just gone from these guys. Pass rush, not there. So we're going to see if they can get back to that. They can make pressure with 3. But if there's a worrying point for me supporting Iowa State, it is Tamatoa McDonough and his defensive line stabilizing that 3-man front so the back 5 can do their job.
Yeah, because last year they didn't get great pressure, but their secondary had so much talent.
Right.
They were okay. They're going to have to get more pressure this year because the secondary is not going to be as good.
And corner Jontez Williams comes back, and safety Jeremiah Cooper comes back, and they'll provide a combined 12 PBUs. The other spots are we got to find more talent here. But, like the first thing you said when we started talking about Iowa State is a team that grows their players. This is a team that matures and coaches and builds their players instead of going out and doing portal snags. So I'm a big fan of Iowa State this year from the scheduling perspective. You play Kansas State, Iowa State on week 0, but the inverse effect of that is you get 3 bye weeks during conference play. That, to me, that's a huge advantage for both Kansas State and Iowa State. And like I said, whoever wins that game, majorly in the driver's seat because you've got 8 conference games left, and Iowa State's going to get 3 bye weeks during conference play. BYU, look at this BYU spot. They're coming to Ames after they play the Holy War. Like, they don't want to be there. No one wants to be in Ames the week after they play the Holy War. That's going to be a shit show for BYU fans and for BYU, the team. TCU, is that the toughest road game on this schedule? Like, legitimately, I think that's the toughest road. Yeah. There's no Baylor. There's no Utah. Is that the toughest game? TCU.
Yeah, no, the schedule broke right for them. It's can they avoid some bad losses? I don't know. I'm out on Iowa State. You're in. Here's the beautiful thing of the Big 12 this year. You can make a lot of cases for these teams. I don't think that there's a ton separated them. Although for me, from a power rating perspective, I have, when we're talking just these top 7 teams that we're going to talk about in part 1, I have Iowa State like almost a field goal behind the rest of the group.
I make their win total.
I have them in like tier, like there's a tier 1 where they're all like the same, like the first 4, a tier 1A,
yeah,
and a tier 2. That's where I have Iowa State this year. But if they continue to develop them, and look, West Virginia was in it the final weekend. I'm not saying they can't be in it. And like,
was it Colorado up there?
I'm out. Yeah, Colorado. I'm out. All right, let's move on to the team that Iowa State lost to in the Big 12 championship game. Maybe a bit of disrespect by me not leading off with Arizona State, but let's talk about those Arizona State Sun Devils. By the way, week 0, Kansas State, Iowa State. I didn't even mention that's Joe's on weed. Chicago, they're amazing. You don't have the RSVP, just show up. We'll be there starting at 11.
Do you know which team has covered that game 5 years straight? 1, 4, or 5?
Who?
Iowa State.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I still got to dive into that game a lot. Maybe we'll go head to head on the.
We can be the first board. You got the board cleaned off from last year.
That'd be fun. Yep. Got it. We finished 6-6. No, I finished. I won 9-8.
Wait, what kind of pencil whip did you do at the end of the year here? Did you get some sort of
the difference was
celebration bowl in there? What'd you do?
What we had the last game? It was you had G Tech against Vandy. That was the difference. Shout out Diego.
Gosh, guy's killing me.
All right, so let's move on to Arizona State. Win total best you can find over 8.5 even money. Best you can find to win the league 6-1. They're right in that range of with all the other top teams. Arizona State had an amazing, out of nowhere year last year. They did get a bit lucky. I mean, they went 6-1 in 1 possession games during the regular season, plus 14 turnovers. So some of the regression flashers go on there, but they're basically running it back from last year. You want to talk about experience, but 17-ish returning starters. They're top 5, I think number 2 in returning production. The offense, you lose a couple receivers, but Tyson, your star's back. The biggest question on offense, there's a couple. You lose your stud center. to the NFL. I think your left guard might be moving to center, but there's you're bringing in a Texas State left guard, so maybe the interior takes a little step back. Cam Scatterbo, you lose. He was the heart and soul of your team. He ran for over 1,700 yards. He was the number 2 receiver on the team. So you bring both Browns back. I think one of the Browns is probably going to be the starter. You add Udo from Army. So it's probably going to be more of a committee approach. How much was Cam worth? That's the question. Obviously he was good out of the backfield. He was an amazing runner. He break so many tackles. But he's also like the heart and soul of the team. How much of an impact will his loss be is definitely a question on the offense. Center position, that interior of the offensive line I'm watching as well. But Sam Levitt, he's back. And then Tyson. I think a number 2 wide receiver, like someone emerging there would really help this offense. Maybe they added Alabama, Clemson transfers, Moss, the kid from Fresno. But I think you're going to see more 12 and 13 personnel this year. So they'd like their tight end room. But the offense should be fine. The defense, again, run it all back. The only guy they really lose on defense is an important one. Is their nickelback Simmons. I thought he was very underrated. They had a nickelback from guess where? Purdue, who they like. Breed love. All these teams love a Purdue guy. But everyone's back in the secondary, which should be really strong. Guess what? For depth, they added a cornerback from Purdue. So their special teams last year were disaster. They were not they couldn't kick a field goal. They had a true freshman punter last year. They should be better. And they added this kid Gomez from Eastern Michigan, who I like to kick for them. So the special team should be better. Remember, this team last year, they lost 2 games during the regular season. One of them, Levitt didn't play when they were at Cincy. He's obviously got to stay healthy. Otherwise, you're going to the Sims experience again. But this team's loaded with experience. And they have a lot of depth back, too, like experienced depth. So their run D was very, very good last year. Their pass D could be a bit better, but they have so much talent returning there. Their experience in the trenches, just experienced all over. The only guys they lost to the NFL, you lose one running back who's big, a center, and a wide receiver. From a scheduling perspective, they play 5 of the other top 6, which isn't great. You do have 5 Big 12 home games, but it's a tough road slate. They have Utah, Iowa State, Baylor, and then Colorado, which is never easy to play on the road. That's a tough Big 12 road slate. They do avoid Kansas State from the top, but get everybody else. It's and here's how the schedule breaks down structurally. Easy first 3, although at Miss State could be a little tricky. They could improve. But Northern Alabama, at Miss State, home against Texas State. And then an easy on paper last 3, West Virginia, at Colorado, home against Arizona. Middle 6, brutal. At Baylor, TCU, at Utah, Texas Tech, Houston, at Iowa State.
With 1 bye in there.
Yeah, with 1 bye. So part of what's worth noting with Arizona State, they were so many injuries, not last year, the years prior. Last year they stayed relatively healthy. That helped lead to their success. There's going to probably be injuries this year. When did they happen? Like if they happen in the middle, might cost them their season. If they can survive some injuries in the beginning and end of the year, because that middle 6, that's going to decide where this team is. I project them 8.6. Nothing for me. I have no interest in backing them 6-1 to win the Big 12. I'll tell you that. What are you seeing with the Sun Devils?
I think the big question is, as much as we can talk about all the returning production coming back, we have to ask, how big was Cam Scatterbo to this offense? How big was he to Kenny Dillingham's and Marcus Arroyo's entire offensive philosophy? I would argue to say he's worth everything. They changed that offense over the year to completely revolve around him. From a numbers perspective, 18% of the receiving yards were his. 65% of the rushing yards were his. But if you want to be honest, like, what did he do? Wheel routes out of the backfield, curls over the middle where the opposing middle linebackers were. He embarrassed middle linebackers that were trying to play pass defense and coverage last year. And I think you have to ask yourself, is that the offense that's going to get run this year? No. Kanye Udo from Army was targeted once out of the backfield by Army quarterbacks last year. We don't know if Kanye Udo even has a set of hands, because the year before when he played for Army, he was targeted once too. 2 targets in his entire college career. So I'm not saying that he can pull off what Cam did last year for Arizona State, which is curl routes over the middle, just making linebackers look just, burning them. And the wheel routes that come out of the backfield. If Kanye can't pull that off, then we have something completely different here in an offense. Now, we do have some explosives. We have some fireworks here. I mean, Jordan Tyson lined up as much in slot as wide out. He can play both positions, 3 yards per route run. That is massively explosive. And Sam Levitt really advanced in his numbers, 13 big-time throws, only 5 turnover-worthy plays. I don't have questions about the explosiveness of this offense, and I don't have questions about Kanye Udoh running the ball. But what made Arizona State so successful last year is the abuse of outside and inside linebackers on dumps into Cam Scatterbo. You watch the highlight reel in the biggest plays.
And just the effect of that over the course of the game.
Yeah, because then all of a sudden it's kind of like, like in a college basketball game, you got a shooter and he's getting double teamed in the post or whatever. Cam was being watched by all eyes at all times. So does Jordan Tyson go and get double covered? Does Sam Levitt, if Kanye Udoh is not in the passing game, what does that do for the other targets on the field? So that, just theoretically, that's where my head is with Arizona State's offense and how they get there. I think it's going to change. The starting secondary does return 23 PBUs. 9 of them are coming from corner Keith Abney. I think some of the struggles they had last year, they're going to continue with this year. 132nd in pass rush and need to get better there. 82nd in tackling. They were dead last in special teams. So there are some things, there were cracks in this team that made it to the college football playoff. And we kept wondering, why is it these guys keep going? It was because of Cam Scatterbo. It was because of the whole entire offensive philosophy. And you mentioned the schedule, 5 home games, but Baylor at Utah at Iowa State. My number only gets up around 7.5. I am under 8.5, minus 105 on this team because I think there's 4 games on this schedule that are just too tough to win. I mean, you're going to Ames, right? You're going to Utah. They're going to be off a bye. You're going to Waco. I'm not sure Mississippi State is a win. I'm not really sure that's an easy win. I mean, I know I project this 6.5, but I mean, you're still going down to listen to cowbells for 4 hours. And maybe you get the Jefferson Pilot 11 a.m. spot, right? I don't think that Mississippi State game is the easiest. So I'm going under 8.5 here.
If I had to, I'd go under, but my numbers say pass. All right, let's move on to Kansas State. Last year, disappointing year. I mean, they should have been better. They outgained 12 of their 13 opponents. Ended up finishing 8-4 in the regular season. They are win total. You're looking at best you can find out there over 8.5 even money, or over 8.5 minus 110. That sees they're 6-1. You're right in that range with everyone else. Avery Johnson's back at quarterback. He's got to be better. He's got to be more consistent. He's got to improve his footwork. He's got to stay healthy too. But can he take that next step? And he's best when he can move, when he can use his legs. He's an electric runner. He's got to improve his footwork when he's passing. There's a consistency there, but he also has to stay healthy. We saw him get banged up last year because if he's not running, then he's not going to be anywhere close to the caliber of player that he can be. Running back, you have Edwards taking over for Giddens. Can he carry the lion's share? Can he be that workhorse back? That's certainly a question. Wide receiver, you lose everybody except Brown, which I think is fine. I don't think that anyone was really a major asset that they lost. But guess what? They added a Purdue transfer who they are counting on.
Ryan Walters supplying the entire FBS teams with a portal roster.
And then, added a couple other guys who were interesting. But the wide receiver room is definitely a question. They like their tight end room. Look out for a 5-star, Lincoln Cure, although he's dealing with an injury. The offensive line last year was so good. It really came together. They were elite. Now they lose their offensive line coach, and they lose 3 starters. And they lose one of them to the NFL, one of them to Washington, both their tackles, and then their left guard. So there's definitely some questions here. They're counting on this kid, Fitzpatrick, to start from Ohio State, but he had a medical issue, and he's still on the sidelines. I don't know what the deal is there. So we'll see how the offensive line comes together. You're probably going to need a couple of these transfers from Pitt, Penn State, and Ohio State to help fill out the gaps. But the offensive line goes from a strength to a potential weakness. We'll see how that comes together. Defensively, you lose Mott, your best pass rusher. This is what I'm really worried about because I like their linebackers. A lot of their depth guys and defensive line are back, but if they're not getting the same amount of pressure, their secondary, which wasn't great last year, I have to say they blew a lot of coverages, but 3 of those guys are on NFL rosters. You lose both your corners, you lose one of your safeties, and your nickel back as well. 2 of those guys are on NFL rosters, and a couple of the guys you added are dealing with injuries. You might have to roll with 2 sophomore corners or like an inexperienced OU transfer or South Alabama transfer. So there's questions here in the secondary. One of the most interesting things about that week 1 matchup is, okay, there's questions on the Iowa State offensive line, but can Kansas State actually get pressure? There's questions with this Kansas State secondary, but can the new wide receivers on Iowa State actually take advantage? So very interesting X's and O's matchup. The D might be shifting to more 4-man fronts. I think the run D will still be good, but I'm worried about the pass D. Offensively, there's questions at receiver, offensive line. So how much can Avery Johnson elevate this team? What are you seeing with a Kansas State team that we mentioned this with Iowa State, 4 Big 12 home, 4 Big 12 away. They get the neutral game to start, which is so big. Their road games, mixed bag, but not easy. Utah, Baylor, Kansas, Oklahoma State. And they avoid just Arizona State from the top. So there's some tough teams on here. The one thing I will say about their secondary, which I am worried about, who are the scary passing attacks on that they play? So like TCU and Baylor, yes. That's in the middle of the season. The rest, and Texas Tech. The rest, they can probably get away with having issues there, but that might end up costing them a shot at getting the Big 12 title.
Yep.
What are you seeing with the Wildcats?
I think it's troubling when you have a quarterback that is 190 pounds when he's wet and wearing 8 layers of clothes. I love Avery Johnson. He's a highlight reel and it's fun to watch, but his size and his style is not good for this team and what they want to do. And when you have an offensive line that is trying to backfill portal and has a lot of questions and injury concerns, that could be a bad combination. And, they brought in Matt Wells to be the quarterback coach for Avery Johnson, the OC now. And Dylan Edwards backed up by Joe Jackson. And I think, from those numbers perspective and that experience perspective, we're okay. But my focus on the offense was completely about this offensive line. Center Sam Heck ranked 89th in PFF of all centers that played at his position. That's not great. Left guard Taylor Poitier, 141st of all guards. Blindside tackle George Fitzpatrick, he couldn't get on the field. In 3 years at Ohio State, he just couldn't get on the field. I mean, it's not saying he's bad. He just couldn't get on the field. And Johnson had just one more big-time throw than turnover-worthy play. And when he has a pressured pocket, and this is what's important. When you see these offensive lines that aren't grading out well and they're trying to put them all together and play together, you need to go look at your quarterback and what they do in a crowded pocket. Avery Johnson was 2 big-time throws and 7 turnover-worthy plays. He just hasn't. I mean, those are freshman numbers, and we needed him to advance, and it just hasn't happened yet. So I'm uncomfortable. I know there was this push for Avery Johnson Heisman last year, and I still kind of sat back and I was like, this is Kansas State because they don't feature like heavy passing attacks. B, his size and the style that Kansas State wants to play is really not that good of a fit. So I don't like the numbers that I'm seeing and the grades of the offensive linemen that are coming in. So offensive wise, I'm definitely out here. The nickel package on the other side, probably the best defensive line in the conference. Toby Osuna-Sanmi and Cody Stufflebean had 9 combined quarterback hits. They had another 6 from linebacker Desmond Purnell. So they have some experience there, especially the defensive line is going to be legit here. But the back end,
they were really good against the run. I mean, they have 3.6 yards per carry, 35 sacks. So they lose Mott, but the back end is what I'm worried about there too. Special teams also a potential concern. You're going to have either a new freshman kicker or a JUCO. So there's definitely some questions there. Yeah. Matt Wells takes over as offensive coordinator. I actually like the fit with Johnson, but he's got to become a better passer, and I just haven't seen it consistently enough.
Well, his style of play is to get out and make shit happen, and that can't work when you're 190 pounds and you got an offensive line that's going to allow that pressure to come to you without even sticking their blocks. So,
yeah, the wide receiver room doesn't look elite either.
Yeah.
It's another team like Iowa State that relies on like development, and they tried to go in the portal to the wide receiver, and it's just I don't necessarily think they got the guys, but we'll
Well,
see.
they didn't get anybody that's proven that they can do anything from a yards per route run, or else I'd be talking about it, but they didn't. And listen, for overall for the season, I don't think Kansas State can win the Big 12. The no number is way too juiced. The no on the playoff is way too juiced. So I focus on the win total. I make it 8.9. So I'm actually over the 8.5. I just don't like where we're heading with the makeup of this team when it comes to the offensive line and their quarterback. I mean, I can sit here and do returning experience and second order win totals, and I can adjust for this shit and that shit, and the mathematical number can say 8.9, but that doesn't mean I'm not uncomfortable with this offensive line and the style of play that Avery Johnson's in.
All right, I bet 8.57, so pass for me, but no interest in Big 12. Let's move on to Texas Tech. So when you look at these top 7 teams that we're going to cover, recruiting, they're all like around 40th nationally. 40th, 50th, portal, 40th, 50th. One exception is TCU, which recruits the best in the Big 12, like at a top 25 level. Not elite, but better than the rest, I think 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
One exception from the portal is Texas Tech. They had the second best portal class in the entire country. The next best was probably Utah. And no, Colorado. Colorado did like top 25. But by far, the best portal class in the Big 12. How to contextualize that? They signed 13 4-stars in the portal. The rest of the Big 12 signed 12 combined. So they signed more 4-stars than the rest of the Big 12 in the portal.
A lot.
So last year they went 8-4 in the regular season, 6-1 in one possession games. They are also, by the way, top 10 in returning production. So there's a reason everyone loves this team. Morton is back at quarterback. He had offseason shoulder surgery. We'll see if he can stay healthy. Hammond got all the spring reps. They're fairly comfortable with him as the backup, but Morton gives them the best upside. They do lose a 1,500-yard back to the NFL and a 1,000-yard receiver, but Joyner comes in from USC in the backfield. And then they just add a ton of wide receivers. They lose a tight end to the NFL, but they add to there. Any position of need, they added to. I am a bit worried about the offensive line. They lose their stud right tackle, which I think is the biggest question because now there's a bunch of guys that are dealing with injuries, like Zambrano. He was out last year. Scurry was out last year with an injury. They're still hurt. So you might have a freshman right tackle. That's the position for me to watch. You bring in Jados from Miami of Ohio. He played tackle at Miami of Ohio, I think. He's going to play guard here. So there's a couple things to watch the offensive line, but this offense should be good. It's Texas Tech, as long as Morton is healthy. The defensive line is probably one of the most improved units in the Big 12. Lose a couple guys that are meh, but they add Hunter from UCF, Gil Howard from NIU, Height from Georgia Tech. Big upgrade, a lot of these guys.
Hunter was an animal at UCF.
Yeah, I loved Gil Howard at NIU. We'll see how he translates, but Height was awesome at G Tech. Holmes from Houston. Big upgrade. You're probably going to have 4 transfers starting. So this defensive line, major upgrade. Linebacker, extremely experienced. Rodriguez and Roberts are back. All of your nickels are back. The secondary was not great last year, and you lose a cornerback to the NFL, and one of your safeties will miss the year. He's going to redshirt with an injury. So you bring in a ton of transfers. I like the kid Balfour out of Charlotte. We'll see how he translates. But and then Wisniewski, I think, was the big get. The North Dakota State transfer. He was probably one of the best defenders at the FCS level. So I think they probably upgraded in talent. We'll see how it comes together. Their special teams have been elite 3 years in a row. They do lose a field goal kicker, their kickoff man, and a kick returner. They had the Buffalo kicker, who was pretty good last year. But we'll see if the special teams can maintain that level of excellence. They also bring in 2 new coordinators. Mac Leftwich comes in from Texas State, air raid guy. He has a Morris Leach background. New defensive coordinator Sheil Wood, we both really like. I thought they did really good hires there. Their development has been pretty iffy under Joey McGuire, who, I don't know, I'm still not in love with him as a head coach. They've struggled on the road. And just developing some of these guys, and they'll drop a road game. Remember they lost at Wyoming. So that they always scare me on the road. Now, the good thing is they're scheduled to open the years. Pine Bluff, Kent State, Oregon State at home before going to Utah. So there's no like tricky road non-conference games to worry about. Their strength of schedule is what, 70th? So they have the easiest overall schedule, mainly because of that soft non-con. They do only get 4 Big 12 home games, so maybe those road woes show up in conference play. There are 5 Big 12 road games: Utah, Arizona State, Kansas State, Houston, and West Virginia. Not easy.
Nope.
They do avoid Baylor, TCU, and Iowa State. I'm assuming they go 7-0 at home. Like their home games, I mentioned the non-con. You got Kansas, Oak State, BYU, UCF. That's like their floor. What they do on the road is going to determine whether or not Texas Tech gets to the Big 12 championship game. But they went out and they spent at the Matador Club. They got money. I mean, you're talking like $250 million facility upgrades. But the deep line transfers, I think, were the biggest news. They couldn't get pressure last year. That'll help their secondary a lot. There's still some questions here. The team has all the talent. Might be getting a little bit too much hype. What say you?
Does this not feel like Ole Miss? Like, I mean, the hype train started 5 months ago, and the money's flowing through, and now we're national. The people around there are thinking national champ. I mean, it feels like Ole Miss.
This does feel exactly like Ole Miss, but they do have a little bit more returning experience, than Ole Miss, and it is the Big 12. So maybe it's a little easier to do this in the Big 12. But it wasn't the greatest transfer class. Like the transfer portal isn't as good as it was a couple years ago.
Right.
But from you can't argue with the talent that they brought in, but you got to assemble it. It's got to come together. Now the good thing is they have some returning production, as top 10 in the country. But yeah, I think they're getting a little bit too much.
Well, it's definitely inflated. We'll just start there, right? I mean, there's a couple of if this and if that, and the first if is Baron Morton, and can you stay healthy? I'm not sure if the kid can. I mean, right behind him, Will Hammond came in with pretty high, a pretty high recruiting rating behind him. So we'll see as a redshirt freshman if he needs to step in for Baron Morton. But generally, he's always been a quarterback here to back up and let Baron go nurse an injury. We'll see if that comes out again. 21 commits in the portal, 13 of them being 4 stars. Just blew the Big 12 away, these NIL budgets. And Baron Morton lowered his turnover-worthy player rate from 4.4% down to 2.8% last year, while improving his on-target up to 55th in the nation. He's getting more accurate. He's making less mistakes. He needs to have a clean bill of health every Saturday. Caleb Douglas, 2 yards per route run. Koei Eakin returns to the wide receiver group, both wideouts. The portal cashed on Reggie Virgil, 2.2 yards per route run from Miami of Ohio. They got JUCO guys, MAC guys, ACC players for the offensive line. They're coming in at 130 career starts, one of the highest in the nation. And Sheil Wood as a defensive coordinator, I think, is one of the best hires of any coordinator out there. I don't think it's being talked about enough. It's going to be a 3-4 hybrid defense. It's going to have multiple looks. You're going to see standing up ends. You're going to see a lot of hidden blitz packages. The defensive line, probably the best in the Big 12. Linebackers Ben Roberts and Jacob Rodriguez are the top 2 returning tacklers, 209 combined. And edge David Bailey from Stanford. Like, I know not a lot of people got a lot of Stanford football in last year, but he brings a lot of sacks. And Lee Hunter, like I said, you couldn't find somebody to plug the A gaps better than what Lee Hunter did for UCF. So I have no questions about the talent. But why does Texas Tech consistently a 7-8 win team and ended up in the Liberty Bowl, right? And I think they might have shored that up from a defensive perspective. I do believe in Sheil Wood from the coaching perspective, but we'll see what Mac Leftwich is going to do. The 5 conference road games, really, that all could be tiebreakers: Utah, Kansas State, Arizona State, all of those being on the road does not make that any easier. At Houston is not a gimme at all. Like, I know Texas Tech is coming in off of a bye, but I don't think Houston is a pushover. We'll get to them in a little while. But if you look at Joey McGuire, how is he in Lubbock versus when he's not? Now, just keep that in mind, because all of our tough road games here are away from Lubbock. If you go into his 3 years, 15-5 at home, 6-10 straight up on the road. I know it's a different team. I know there's different coaches. I know there's different players. I know there's NIL budget. I get it. But the road has not been good to Joey McGuire's staffs, and you're going to have to produce on the road this year. I'm going to go under 8.5. I make it 8 on the dot, and I think it's just been too inflated. I think did this open 7.5? I mean, it's just been blown out of the water for months. I've been waiting. I think it's time to fire because it's plus 120 on the under 8.5, and I make it 8 on the dot.
Texas Tech, yeah, the best you could find out there, 6-1 to win the conference at DK. Over 8.5. If you want to go over, it's -140. I'm close to 9.
You're gonna have to win the big ones on the road, and I'm not there with them.
Yeah, I don't. 6-1, no thanks. But I'm close to market, so it's a pass for me. I mean, from a power ratings perspective, I have Arizona State, Baylor, Kansas State, Texas Tech, all basically within a point of each other. TCU,
What's Baron Morton worth? What's Baron Morton worth to you? Like if we found out he broke his back or a rib or something and he's not playing for a month, what would you dock them?
Let's see. Let me look at. So Hammond would start.
Mm-hmm.
He's.
Oh gosh, Mitch Griffiths is here from Wake.
Yeah, I was reading an article today about how they like his leadership.
I once heard Houston Nutt say, "Well, we picked him to play quarterback because he hands the ball off the best."
About a field goal. So
about a field goal.
If I were to downgrade Texas Tech, say Morton got hurt week 1, if I were to downgrade them by a field goal, cost them about 0.75 wins. All right, let's move on. Let's finish up with TCU. TCU, best number you could find out there to win the Big 12. You could find a 9-1 out there at Caesars. If you want to go over, you can go over 6.5 -160. It's a lot of variation of the prices. So you can go over 7 -125 at Circa. When you look at TCU, they did lose a lot. They've been recruiting really well. They're just like building and developing this team under Sonny Dykes. And they're not really going out in the portal and getting a ton of guys. He likes his roster this year. But they did lose some key players. Josh Hoover's back at quarterback. Remember, he was hurt in the spring last year. This is his first full year with Bryles, first full off season. I like some of the things I saw from Hoover last year, but he's got to make do without his top 3 receivers who are now all on NFL rosters. McAllister's got to be that guy to step up. He's got to be the alpha. And you bring in a couple intriguing transfers. Manjack from Houston, he's been around. He's okay. This kid Dwyer from Idaho, he's interesting. He had like 1,200 yards last year at the FCS level. You lose a tight end to the NFL. Offensive line-wise, you lose your center to Miami. You lose your left tackle. You do get a left guard back from injury. You get, your other left guard is probably moving to center. The key might be your freshman left tackle, Hughes. I think he's the key to the offensive line. Talented kid. Can he hold that position down? We'll see. Defensively, linebacker, you're set at, I think, with Obiezer and Elam Zor back. Maybe some depth issues, but linebacker, I think they're okay. Defensive line-wise, still a question. Defensive end looks better. Defensive tackle, still a question for me. In the secondary, you lose some talent. You lose both corners of the NFL. Abe Kamara, your nickel, has been around a while. He's gone. Some of the guys that you brought in are okay for me, but not great. I think Jackson might start, the Washington transfer. You have Bud Clark still around. Johnson's back at safety. So there's some talent there, but I'm a little concerned. The D had injuries last year, but they get some guys back. They just have to improve their run defense. Was really bad last year. Their third down D was bad, and they just got to find the right cornerback duo. Their defensive backs were elite last year, despite no havoc up front. And their defensive backfield's probably going to take a step back. Andy Avalos in year 2 has to find a way. This is what he's known for, to get more havoc. So this team's good. They're, I think, worthy of being in this top 7 conversation. I have them tier 1A. And, I mean, I have them right with Utah. The D did improve late last year, but against 2. This is what's concerning to me, because their their secondary lost some talent. You lose both corners of the NFL. You lose a nickel who's been around forever. They held LIU, Utah, who was a disaster, Oak State, who was a disaster, Cincy, ULL, to 7 points per game. Their other 8, over 35 points per game. Everyone got to at least 4 touchdowns. That includes Stanford, Arizona, Houston. We know how bad their offense was, and UCF. So some of their defensive numbers benefited from playing just disaster situations with Utah, Oak State, Cincy. They only have 4 Big 12 home games. They have a tough non-conference. You start at UNC. You host SMU. They do face 4 of the top 6. You avoid Utah and Texas Tech. You do host Baylor and Iowa State. But last year, they avoided the top 4 and they played the bottom 7. Like that was the schedule last year. But they have been recruiting well. They've been the number 1 recruiting team in the Big 12 for the last 3 years. There's lots of talent on this team. They build, they develop. But wide receiver they need to improve 3. They need to replace 3 NFL guys. Offensive line has to come together. Is this freshman left tackle? Is he the guy? Defensively, got to get more pressure because the secondary is probably taking a step back. What are you seeing with the Horned Frogs?
I like them a lot, and I don't know why, because I'm only picking out negative things about them when I'm doing research on them. But my number says that I should be taking over 7 minus 125. I'm closer to 8 on these guys, and the power rating didn't really
7.5.
Yeah, but all I can do is when I research these guys is like nitpick them. Best quarterback wide receiver duo in the conference, maybe. I mean, we're talking about Josh Hoover, who's still struggling with mistakes. I mean, this is where I get kind of caught up because Hoover is really good against certain coverages, and like cover 1 he can't read, and then everything else quarters he smokes, right? So it's just depends with him. I know the ones that he's struggled with. I know the ones that he's good at. So it's been like a game to game. 27 to 11 TD to INT, 17 to 18 big time throws to turnover worthy plays, which means he's still making big mistakes. Now he's 37th and on target. So how much is that on him? It's really weird to see him so accurate, but still making more mistakes than big time throws. And I think what really bothers me last year, 127 dropbacks with pressure in a pressure pocket, 1 big time throw, 8 turnover worthy plays. So the offensive line has to be there, and they're pretty mid tier for the Big 12 from what I can read from some of the units, some of the portal entries. I mean, there's guys over 300 pounds, but the experience where the places that they got them are not really to the level of the Big 12. Now, Eric McAllister is the home run hitter here by far for Hoover. You're going to hear that name a lot. Hoover's going to hit him.
A ton of catches this year.
2.9 yards per route run on 58 targets and 11.5 ADOT. He catches them deep and he goes fast. So as I nitpick the offensive line and I'm worried about Hoover throwing with pressure because he's been awful, he has a weapon that can take it to the house.
But how much better can the receivers be? Richardson, Williams, and Becker are all on NFL teams right now. I don't know if their receivers can be much better than last year. Their run game has to be better. They had no run game last year.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. Cook is gone. Who cares? They had Barnes. Battle and Payne got to step up. They need some balance. They had no balance. They could not run at all.
Yeah.
And that's going to come down to the offensive line, too, which definitely has questions.
Which, hey, Kendall Brow's offense, I'm not sure he runs to line it up and knock heads anyways. But, Andy Avalos on the other side of the ball at the 4.25, you're right. They want to get some havoc in there. Not good numbers last year whatsoever trying to produce any havoc. 122nd in pass rush, 84th in havoc overall. That could be a lot better. Contested catch rate, 100th for TCU last year. So it does need to get better in the secondary. Avery Helm burned a red shirt last year. He's going to be at the corner. Star linebacker Devian Deal and linebacker Nnamdi Obayazor, they returned 10.5 tackles for loss and 8 sacks. So that's where your cornerstone piece is going to be for Andy Avalos to generate some havoc. That being said, 5 Big 12 road games, back-to-back spot from Provo to Houston, who's off of a bye week. Arizona State, Iowa State, BYU all project to have top secondaries in the conference, and that's what Hoover's going to throw into. I mean, Baylor comes to Fort Worth off of a bye week. That's a problem. Mathematically, I'm making this 8.1, and I'm saying, yeah, I'd rather go to Circa and get the 7 over 125 than I would touch that 6.5, like minus 160, minus 180. But all I do, Stuck, is nitpick this team on both sides of the ball, and it starts with Hoover's mistakes when he sees pressure. So, listen, I think they've got their home run hitters. They can't run the ball. They might not be able to protect Hoover. He can score at any time. The defense is going to cause some fumbles and some turnovers. It's going to help them out, but they're going to get blown away too. So this team is a little bit tough to handicap, but I'm over. I'm probably going to end up being over with my wallet and in the action app.
TCU's taking some money against UNC. Big money. Line's
They
flipped.
should.
Over a field goal.
Well, do you start to worry about how well Steve Belichick calls a pass defense? Like Washington was
yes, and Bill's still a defensive guy. He's got all offseason to prepare for this. And it's not like TCU's been great in season openers. We saw them lose to Colorado. Last year, they could have lost at Stanford. Two horrendous teams the last 2 years.
They beat Duquesne in 2021, 45-3.
I'm starting to get – well, yeah, Dykes wasn't there. But Dykes that's not the best track record early. I'm starting to get an itch on UNC.
Let it flow.
I would lean over. Especially
let that shit flow.
I would 6.5 juice. I think this is definitely a 7-win team, but I project 7.5. All right, that'll do it for part 1. We'll be right back with part 2, but thanks for tuning in. Thanks for Colin for joining me. Thanks to our producer. Make sure you subscribe, tell friends, tell any 5-star reviews. They really help us out this time of year. I'm going to do some giveaways, some contests. Leave one if you can. But we'll be back with part 2 covering the other 9, trying to find a sleeper. Catch you all on the other side. Cheers.
Peace out.